I have the pleasure to stay on this stage with Shikdem Aker and Eric Bries. Shikdem works on strategy and innovation at the German Publisher and Booksellers Association. And Eric is the founder of Cyberlibris, that is a pioneer of institutional subscription from public libraries. And well, I start now with Eric, and please introduce your project, and then with Shikdem. So.
Okay, so I'm glad to be here. It's always a great pleasure to see all those friends and new faces. As Salvatore said, I'm the founder of Cyberlibris. We are a bit like veterans of the e-book. We started 18 years ago, close to 20 years, on a very specific business model, digital library, subscription-based. So we started the subscription story years ago. And dedicated to the very concept of library. So aggregating books, but not in any fashion though, with a very careful design to specific audiences. And as we speak now, we cover three main silos. The first one is the academic silo. So we have digital libraries dedicated to higher education, to class of age from roughly 11 to 18, and also for kindergarten. So we are a B2B model, so we don't have individual consumers facing us, institutions are facing us. The next pillar of business is professional. Over 18 years, you have a lot of digital library alumni, which are now professionals, and they expect in their respective firms to have the tool they had when they were students. So we have libraries for bankers, managers, civil servants. And the next silo is grand public, meaning public library. So the three main times when any individual read for learning or teaching, read for the profession, and read for leisure when you have time. So the three silos. Now the topic of this roundtable is about discoverability. When I look at the library, a metaphor comes immediately to my mind, which is the one of an orphanage. Books are orphans waiting to be adopted. And the problem is that the adoption process is quite tricky. And the richer is a library, which is what you would expect. You don't expect a library with 2 books, you expect a rich library. But the richer is the library, the more cumbersome it is to discover those books. And the thing is that today you hear a lot of that word, metadata, metadata, metadata. And it seems like it's the magic to transform that orphanage in a location where adoption is fast because you have the metadata. I don't think it's true. And I think if you start with metadata, you get it all wrong. And I really think that you get it all wrong because metadata were invented for the print book interface, which is the bookstore and the library. It was helping those guys, the bookstore owners, the librarians, to organize the shelves so that you, as a patron, can browse through the shelves and go to physics, astronomy, and that's what we had metadata. When you go digital, no more space, no more physical constraint. And the metadata was very useful in a physical space because when you have a physics book, only one copy, you can put it only in one place. So you need a tag to that place so that the people can find that book. If we were rich enough, we would have thousands of the same physics books, and we put it in thousands of places, and then the problem of metadata would not be so much of a problem. So what we started with is tabula rasa. So we said we have thousands and thousands of books in each of our library. And we said, okay, let's assume we know nothing about which book is physics, which book is chemistry, which book is cooking, or which book is personal development. So we go blind. Well, not so blind, because we call the US Cavalry. And who's the US Cavalry? Usage data. In fact, we are fortunate enough that through the design of the libraries, we capture high-value data, which are usage data. How people read books, which books they read, which books they put in their shelf, which tag they put on their respective shelves. It's amazing the chest that you have when you look at it. Now, obviously, when you look at it, it's here in action. This is real time in one of our service public library. So each time you see the circle moving, it's a book that is currently opened. If you see it moving, it's turning the page. Usage data, the flow, the shelves, and so on and so forth. So you have data. Now, obviously, it's disorder, it's noise. But what a noise. So what did we do with that? We started a brand new experiment to precisely help people rediscover books. And this is currently deployed in public libraries on huge screen, tactile, and people use their fingers. So let me show you the first experiment, which is called BiblioViz. And the idea is very simple. You go into the library or the bookstore, you pick a book, and suddenly all the books change place, just because you triggered usage data. So let me show you an example. Here we picked, you don't see it very clearly, but the item, the entry point is the losers, the least weekly read books, not the most read books, those who were not fortunate enough to be really adopted. And here they are. And assume that you're facing that screen, and for the first time you can flip through a shelf instead of doing this. So it's a big improvement. Now, you pick a book, and immediately you have the info of that book. You can see the table of content, you can browse through the book, you can open the book, read the book immediately, like you would do in the physical space. So digital has to be as good as the physical space. Now, when you click again on that book, suddenly a new shelf appears. And that shelf is based only on usage data. Now, when you look at all those books, this is amazing. The swarm intelligence embedded into that shelf. We did the test with librarians, and they told us, even though they are metadata experts, that a lot of those books that are suggested here in that new shelf, they would not have thought of them. And when they looked at them, as it makes tremendous sense, we should have recommended them. Swarm intelligence in action. Now, the next experience is basically to draw upon patrons themselves and figure out whether we call it the lighthouse, patrons lighting the space, and we use algorithms to compute communities. So each of those cloud clusters, this is a community, computed based on usage data. Now we can focus on this one, on bio-cooking, nutrition, and all that. And then you click on any one of those points, and you see book appearing, meshed by the usage of that community. So if you know nothing about bio, about nutrition, Ask those guys, they are aficionados, as embedded by their reading and the community. And if one book is of interest to you, take your finger and put it over there, and bingo, you have the info of that book. And what you can do is, immediately if a book, you like it so much, interesting, take your finger, put it in your shelf. That's it. But you see, if we de-zoom the space here, de-zoom completely, back to the initial stage, you see metadata. So this is where metadata, the traditional metadata, pop back into the picture, not before, after. We identify the communities, and then we try to figure out which metadata would have been set on those communities through the books by the experts. So we reconcile the usage data, metadata, and the expert metadata. Now, just to conclude, Erasmus once said, a few centuries ago, he was amazed, scared to death by the swarm of books arriving continuously. And he said, imagine, he was the expert, and he said, how are we going to cope with a swarm of books coming on us? Well, use swarm intelligence, the swarm of users against the swarm of books. Call the US cavalry and do the work properly through visualization, through the proper handling of data. But it's not only the proper treatment of data through mathematics and all that. That's the cooking, the most important part. Make it useful to the people, engaging, and that's what we are trying to do basically, and we are currently deploying this type of things everywhere, in universities, schools, public libraries, so that the discovery process is truly flannery through books and discovering books. Thanks a lot.
Hello, everyone. As Salvatore said, I'm from the German Publishers and Booksellers Association, and I would like to share some insights of our current developments regarding our book buyer study we had last year, and some examples how we can focus on B2B and B2C book discoverability. So, as you can see here, this is our turnover. We had so we have new figures which have been published today. So we have the 2018 numbers now, but it's more or less the same as 2017. So I have these numbers from the last years with us. So it's more or less a saturated market, and we have a stable turnover between 9.5 and 9 billion euros every year. And as you can see, there were many new devices and media entertainment services coming up in the last couple of years, and still the market and the turnover remained quite stable, which is kind of a remarkable result. Despite this fact, despite this comfy turnover situation, all the publishers and booksellers said, okay, there's something going on because the sales volumes are going down and the turnover is still fine, but this is because of the prices has increased and not because of the sales, which has been really going down. So we decided to start this survey in 2017, focusing on the book buyers and the reading behavior. And here we have some quantitative figures. So how many book buyers have we lost and in which areas? And you can see in the last couple of years, we've lost more than 6 million book buyers in Germany. And that's quite a lot. So it was a figure which was going on in the last year. It was in the newspapers, in the press, everywhere. Everyone said, okay, 6 million buyers less. But who did we lose? So it was most of them were occasional book buyers, so people who only bought 1 or 2 books a year. And what was interesting, it's mainly among younger age groups. So this is not a fact which is surprising, but it's people between 20 and 49. And young kids and teens and people over 50, they stayed more or less stable. So And what was quite astonishing, the education level didn't have any relevant impact. So, but the good news is that we had like recent numbers have been published that we won again 300,000 book buyers in the last year. So for now we have stopped the downward trend, but still we wanted to find out what are the reasons for this loss. So as you have seen in the turnover chart, we had like a lot of new media coming up, and as you can see, the market share, the book sector is the only one who has lost in the last year, or in the last years. And especially games, cinema, and also the video streaming has won a lot of market share and interest. So you can see, especially in the younger age groups, it has been a huge thing. And yeah, we don't have to talk so much about it because we heard a lot about new trends and media going on, but so much of the time now is spent online and on communication, but as well on movies and on online games, and especially in the younger generations. So our conclusion was the book is losing interest and attention while other entertainment sectors are winning, and especially audiovisual on-demand services. So what is the consequence, or what did we do next? So we had interviews with focus groups, so with people who stopped buying books or who read less now, and we talked to them about their consumers' daily lives and their attitude towards books and reading. And our key findings were that, okay, regarding like they have like a certain amount of time they spent on media attention or media consumption, they had like a lack of time resulting from so many options they had. They also had like an attention deficit because they had so many information going on and so much information, content via different channels. And there's also like a change in values, so we're so focused on always being productive, being multitasking all the time, so it's difficult to concentrate on one thing at a time, and books are the total opposite of this. So in the end we said, yeah, books have disappeared from much of the public debate and from the personal life of people. So it's like they tend to forget about books. So they are no longer a major topic of their conversations. So they fall under the radar. And this also increases the cultural acceptance of not reading at all. So, and this is also like a problem that we have like so many books in the bookstores, and the people really, okay, if I really want to read a new book, I really have to know it's the right book for me. I don't want to spend time on books which are not interesting for me. So we really have to, so this is the next conclusion, that the next read is really hard to come by. So we have like a lack of orientation, and we really have to bring the books back to the people. Nevertheless, it was like that we saw a lot of opportunities in these interviews because the people said, we really love reading. It's like a deeply satisfying activity, and they really said it's like they have very positive memories about reading books. So what we have to do now, or what we've learned through this survey is that we have to bring the book back to the reader. So this is also, which is like a part of the book discoverability thing, that the people, we have to pull them into the books and not and push them back to them. So, and what you see here is like the 5 key needs we found out through the study that, and the first 2 are, I think, the most important ones, that we have to draw potential readers' attention through more visibility and to give them more orientation through security, and this is also like linked to the book discoverability topic. So, so that's what we have to make sure, that on the one hand we have a higher visibility of books compared to other media, and on the other hand help consumers find the right book among this huge selection of available titles. So, and now I have some best practice examples. So the first thing is I want to talk a bit about B2B and what we can do with metadata. So Eric already had some quite impressive ideas of what you can do with it, and also about visibility. So this is more like what the industry can do in the background. And in Germany we have 2.4 million available titles. So how do booksellers keep their overview, and how do you recommend books to your customers? So books and text are a perfect provider for metadata, we know that. And in Germany we have like this, it's called VLB, Verzeichnis lieferbarer Bücher, so books in print. It's like an online platform where the bookseller can research all the available titles, and it's basically based on metadata. And what you can see is like the international version, which launched in Brazil and which is going to be launched in Latin America as well. And the question is, okay, what kind of metadata do we need in the future? Can it be more reader-oriented? So we are working on a new orientation system at the moment. So it's more like, okay, what are the needs of the readers and not the needs of the booksellers when they are researching for it? And how do we improve the system we already have continually? And as Brian yesterday mentioned, I think it's not a one-way street anymore. So we have to exchange the information we have and to build up the systems to do it a bit better. The second example is more focusing on book promotion. So we have 70 to 80,000 new titles every year in Germany. So how do we make sure that the books are going to be like, that the booksellers know about the books and that they recommend the right books to the right consumers? So we have like the MVV, one of our subsidiaries, that developed a system called VWBTix, which is like an online platform where you can have like all the new titles, all the catalogs of the publishers available in one platform. And the first version was launched in 2016 and it's now continually developed and optimized with customers and clients, so with the publishers and booksellers. And it's a huge change process for the whole industry because before that we had all the print catalogs for the booksellers and now we like have one online platform. But it also has a lot of advantages, so like you have direct order options in it, you have like a workflow optimization, you have like decreasing costs because you don't have to print the catalog anymore, and you have like interactive multimedia content, and it's like the up-to-date version. You don't have like, if you make amendments, if you have new titles, you can just put it in, and you also can reach new target groups through this because you can have like reading and samples in it, and you can reach out to bloggers and journalists as well. And this autumn it's going to be interesting because the first, so Random House, the biggest publishing house in Germany, is going to it's not going to print a catalog anymore, so they're only using VLBTix for their autumn titles, and the same applies to Thalia, our biggest bookselling chain. They are doing their novelty orders with that system from autumn on only. So the second thing is like, okay, when we talk about, okay, we want to get closer to our consumers, to the readers, how can we help them by finding the right book for them? So how to find the next read more easily. So one example I want to show is developed by Thalia. So they have like in their app, they have like a service which is called Thalia Next. And there you can put in like your favorite author or a book you have read you really liked. And then you get like this map where you can see like, okay, this is the book you have read. But there are also books which are connected to them. And this is not based on keywords only, but it's based on recommendations by booksellers. So they use their huge network of booksellers of Thalia to put in recommendations, and that's like a new way. And if you maybe combine it with artificial intelligence and so on, I think you really get better recommendations. And the second example is by a German publishing house called Trömer Knauer. They said, after we made our book buyer study, they said, okay, we have to do something. We have to publish books in a different way. So they said, okay, Netflix is a really good example because everyone is using it at the moment. Everyone is satisfied or inspired by it. So let's publish a book in a Netflix way. So they used like the binge-watching hype. And in last autumn, they published a book, which is, it's actually 3 books, but it's the Doors Project by a well-known fantasy author, Markus Heitz. And they first published a free reading sample. It's the beginning of the story, and it was like available over social media, over a lot of different touch points, and they downloaded, so the customers downloaded, the readers downloaded 85,000 of this free reading sample, and after that they had to choose between 3 different books. So they had the reading sample was the beginning of the story, and at the end it was like, okay, you can go through one door, through the second door, through the third one. And it was like the same characters, but also different plots. So as a reader, you could say, okay, I only want to read one book, or you could read all 3 books after each other. So it was like a kind of binge reading then. And it was quite successful, and all 3 books have been published at the same time, and they're now planning a second season. So they also call it season. It's not like they have like a series anymore. Yeah, that's what I wanted to show you, and I have now some suggestions for discussions. So we have to attract the customers in new and different touch points. That's one thing. And it's also that we have to use, or how can we use reader analytics and artificial intelligence to publish books that are really read, not only bought or sold. And I guess that we can do better than Netflix if we cooperate, but that's really a thing I wanted to talk about and with you. And this was really a short overview of what we're doing, but if you're interested in a more deeper dive into our book buyer study, we have like an English summary which you could download on our website. So thank you.
We in these days, we have talked about a lot of things, and we have had a lot of food for thought. We talk about AI, we talk about user experience, we talk about competition between media, and in this sense, how does this book discoverability match with these topics? So the first question is how to manage this fragmentation of content, and how to publisher can work to give a best experience to the readers. So.
Okay. I think the first thing to think of is, and I take a very specific example, for instance, which is deep to my heart because I'm an ex-academic. I used to teach students, and I look at students now. I'm a lot older than current students, and the way digital is brought to them. And the way digital is brought to them is in silos. And when you think of it, and when I talk every year, for instance, to publishers in Frankfurt, textbooks publishers, for instance, I keep reminding them that when I observe students who happen to be our users, more often than not, they don't read a book, they view a YouTube video on money creation, monetary economics, or whatever. And you could think it's a lost cause, so textbook has lost to the video. No, it's the simple thing that the two don't talk together, and it's very bizarre that you cannot define a user experience, so start from the user and figure out all that wealth that we have at our disposal. We are incredibly awkward with it. There is wealth, and we complain about having wealth. So think of the Africans. They must think that we're mad. We have wealth, and we don't know how to handle it properly. Well, this is where users are very, very important. This is where you should get your inspiration from. So what, by the way, I didn't mention him, Clément, who works with me on this, showed you. We are now on the next step. And what we have been trying to do is to broaden experience, say, to the students, very dedicated, where by the same token where you could flip through the shelves, you could flip through books and videos. And videos, they have usage data. And then the students can say, okay, I don't understand anything about that inflation thing, so I'm going to view that clip, and then I'm ready to open the book and dive into the book, because guess what? Through usage data, few books are candidate along the video. So if you handle the discovery thing silo after silo, it means you don't care about the user. User has many options, content, podcast. So make sure that given the needs of that user, you use properly the usage data, and usage data are there to be used, to be linked, to be meshed, and transform into a real user experience. And the only way, as Erasmus was saying, Erasmus was complaining about all those books published every year. It was Erasmus days. Think of these days. What is the quantity that is matching that enormous quantity of books? Usage data. And don't think, because this is always a criticism that is addressed to algorithm, artificial intelligence, network science, that it creates a bubble, and that you're a victim of the bubble and you end up always looking at the same books. In our case, through what we do, 75% of the books, 75, 3 out of 4, are discoverable. I don't call it a bubble. I call it a huge space because it translates into several thousands of books. but the experience is seamless, is rich, and you end up with people saying, you cared for me. And that's what I think matters a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, what I think it's like, what's important that the books, so we always have like the publishers are doing the metadata and so on, and they think they know what the reader is interested, but actually they don't talk so much to the readers because they, in the past, they were always focused on talking to the booksellers and getting information from them. So I think getting direct contact to the consumers and to the readers and using the data they get from, like when you read on an ebook reader or whatever, you really get a lot of information. And I think you can really do something about making books better. And so we have a lot of startups which are focusing on how to use reader analytics and how to learn through natural language things and so on, that they will really learn about the text and how the text is going to be improved. And I think that's something publishers have to learn, that it's not a bad thing that that they don't know everything, but it's more like that they learn a lot through this information and can do better with it, and I think that's an important thing. And artificial intelligence is just a tool for them. If they just understand that it's not like it's not going to replace them or whatever, it's like it helps them to create better books, and I think that's what we all want to do, because in the end it's the idea of that people read more, and they read more because the books are fitting them better and they find the right books for them, then it's a good thing.
Okay. I think that one of the battlefield is the proximity of the right content to the right reader. And is there a requirement for the publishers to reduce this distance and to give the right content to that reader?
Yes, there is. In fact, I told you I'm an ex-academic, and I'm surprised that what applies to scientific articles does not apply to books when they are published. When you're a scientist and you publish an article, there are rules you have to enforce. And if you don't enforce them, you're not published. And what are those rules? Number one, obviously you need an article. Number two, you need an abstract. And number three, you don't get published if you don't put the metadata of your work. So right at the beginning, at the inception of the creation, the creator puts the metadata. Take now the example of book publishing in my country. I live in Belgium, but I'm French by origin. Explain me one thing. We have an entity called Electre. Electre sells metadata to the bookstores. Very costly. It's an annual license per computer. If you are a bookstore owner with 3 computers, you pay 3 licenses. Guess who are the shareholders of Electre? The publishers. So the publishers charge the book owners who must wet their shirt to sell the books for the metadata? Weird. Totally weird. So you make money on metadata on those guys who are supposed to sell the books while you didn't do your job in the first place? So we should have, like we do for scientists, put the metadata on your work. Let's start from square one. Don't mobilize algorithm and data. Start where it's natural to start. Ask the authors to put metadata, organize the whole thing, get the metadata. Very simple thing. So don't reinvent the wheel. Do it properly. And it exists. Scientists, that's what they do. Why do they do that? To be quoted, to be discovered. Because they need the article to be discovered, because if they're discovered, they're going to be promoted. Believe me, because they want to be promoted, they put the right keywords. And funnily enough, they don't do that in the book publishing industry. Something must be wrong somewhere.
Okay. Shikchen, you
Yeah,
want to add?
I guess that we have to reconcile. So we are also consumers. So, and I think what we have learned from our changing media behavior is like we don't think about like, okay, I want to read a book now because whatever. It's more like I have like a certain situation, I want to fill in some media attention, whatever. I usually have my smartphone with me. If the books are not on the smartphone, I have like a problem because everyone is complaining that everyone is sitting there with the smartphone, but you could also say there's a chance if you have like digital products which are really fitting to that device. And I think it's also a huge mistake that we say, okay, in Germany we have like a market share of ebooks of 5%, and that's okay. They say it's good that it's not higher, but I think it could be better if it would be higher, and it's, yeah. And on the other hand, it's like, if we think about that as a consumer, we would always say, okay, it's on a rainy Sunday, I would like to have a nice, chilly, yeah, I want to sit in my chair and I want to drink a coffee or whatever and have like some relaxing time for me. And I think that's the point where we have to start, not, okay, this person wants to read a book, but the person has a leisure time and we have to fill that need. And I think that's the way we want to do with our new orientation system we're trying to develop, because we want to get into deeper in the brain of the consumers, because it's not, we don't ask them what do you want. If you want to pick a book, it's more like, okay, really going deep into the brain and discover what are their really needs. And that's not the thing, okay, I want to read a book, because that's not the interest of the consumer at all. Because that's not the same when we go to Netflix or whatever. We just want to fill in our leisure time and be entertained.
Okay, thank you. We are at the end. So, and we are at the end of this day. So, one take-home message about discoverability, about book discoverability, just in a sentence.
Well, over those 2 days, I like, the quotation that you put on screen. And mine was from last year, I think. Disorder is the reason why we have libraries, and disorder is why they are there to stay. I love disorder. So the whole issue is that library is a place of order, by definition, top-down. Disorder, as you understood from what I said, is bottom-up. So what we've got to do is combine the two, top-down, bottom-up. What we miss is a strong bottom-up. We have a very strong top-down. But its strength is its weakness. And it can regain strength through bottom-up. Order, disorder, disorder, order, like a circular economy.
Yeah, for me it would be like, we have like so many really great books in the world, and I think we just have to find the right spot to make a matchmaking between the consumers, the readers, and these books. And I think it's easier to do it when we cooperate and collaborate, and not when everyone is doing it alone.
Okay, right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Shiken. Thank you, Eric. And that's all.